Let me tell you what happens in the 30 seconds before you give up. You open the document, your chest gets tight, your mind goes blank, or worse, it floods with everything you've ever done wrong. Your body gets heavy. You suddenly remember 17 other things you need to do first. So you close it, and you tell yourself, I'll do it later, when I feel better, when I'm more ready. But here's the truth, you're never going to feel ready, because this isn't about readiness. It's about your brain treating that blank page like a predator. Procrastination isn't laziness. It's a nervous system response, and you've been misreading the signal your entire life. Here's what most people don't understand. Procrastination is not a productivity issue. It's an emotional regulation issue. You're not avoiding the task, you're avoiding the feeling the task brings up. Psychologists call this affect regulation failure, when your brain prioritizes short-term mood repair over long-term goals. The discomfort of starting feels more threatening right now than the consequences feel in the future, so your nervous system chooses immediate relief. Every single time you sit down to write the email, your chest tightens, your mind goes foggy. So you close it. You'll do it later, when you feel better. But later never comes, because the feeling is always there waiting. This is temporal discounting. Your brain values immediate emotional relief far more than future consequences. The anxiety of starting feels unbearable. The deadline 3 weeks away feels abstract. So you close the tab, you pick up your phone, you feel better for exactly 10 minutes. Or maybe it's the project at work, the one that matters. You have ideas, good ones, but every time you try to start, this voice shows up. What if it's not good enough? What if you fail? This is preemptive self-protection. If you never finish, you never face judgment. If you never start, you never confront the possibility that your best wasn't enough. Procrastination keeps the fantasy of your potential intact by never testing it against reality. From the outside, people see someone disorganized, unreliable, but inside you're drowning. Inside, the task isn't just a task, it's a test of your worth. And your brain, trying to protect you from that unbearable feeling of inadequacy, simply shuts you down before you can fail. This is the procrastinator's paradox. You're not lazy, you're afraid. So what does this cost you? Everything slowly. Procrastination corrodes your relationship with yourself. Every time you promise yourself you'll start tomorrow and don't, you're teaching your brain that you can't be trusted, that your word means nothing. Psychologists call this self-efficacy erosion, the gradual breakdown of your belief in your ability to follow through. Each failed attempt chips away at your confidence. Over time, you stop seeing yourself as someone who can handle challenges. You start seeing yourself as someone who collapses under them. And the shame, because procrastination doesn't happen in silence. It happens while you're watching other people succeed. Every day you don't start is another day you fall further behind. The anxiety becomes constant. Not the sharp kind that makes you act, but the low-grade background kind that makes you numb. This is chronic stress activation. When the threat never goes away, your body stays locked in low-level emergency. Your cortisol stays elevated, your sleep gets worse, your focus fractures. You're tired all the time, but you can't rest. And then there's the psychological debt, the mounting pile of things you've promised yourself you'd do. Every abandoned project, every half-finished idea. You carry all of it, until the thought of starting anything new feels impossible. Here's the hidden cost. Procrastination doesn't just steal your time, it steals your identity. You stop seeing yourself as the person you wanted to be. You start seeing yourself as the person who can't follow through. The person whose life is always just around the corner, perpetually delayed, never quite arriving. So where does this come from? For most chronic procrastinators, there's a pattern that started early. Maybe you were the smart kid, the talented one, the one with so much potential. And you learned that your value wasn't inherent. It was earned through performance, through achievement. This is conditional self-worth, when your sense of being okay is tied directly to external validation and success. You're not valuable because you exist. You're valuable because you succeed. And if you fail, then what are you? So every task becomes high stakes. Every blank page becomes a courtroom where your worth is on trial. Your brain developed threat generalization, where your amygdala starts treating psychological threats the same way it treats physical ones. It just knows, this thing makes you feel unsafe. This could lead to rejection, to failure, to the confirmation that you're not enough. So it stops you. The culture you grew up in didn't help. You were raised in a world that worships productivity. That treats your output as your identity. So you internalized, your worth equals your productivity. But here's what nobody told you. Procrastination often isn't the problem. It's the symptom of perfectionism. Perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about impossible standards. The belief that anything less than flawless is failure. That if you can't do it perfectly, you shouldn't do it at all. When the bar is perfection, starting becomes terrifying. You're not just risking a mediocre result, you're risking the destruction of your entire self-concept. So you wait for the perfect moment, the perfect mood, the perfect conditions. Conditions that never arrive. And this is how you've been living. Not by choice, but by crisis. Not by intention, but by avoidance. Sprinting toward deadlines, not because you work well under pressure, but because pressure is the only thing strong enough to override the fear. This isn't productivity. This is survival. And it's exhausting. Here's what happens when you live like this long enough. You stop seeing procrastination as something you do. You start seeing it as something you are. I'm just a procrastinator. I've always been like this. These aren't descriptions, they're surrender. And once procrastination becomes your identity, everything changes. You stop making plans. You stop telling people about your ideas. You stop dreaming in concrete terms and start dreaming in abstract maybes. Someday Eventually I want to. But things never calm down. Because the chaos isn't coming from your circumstances. It's coming from the cycle you're trapped in. You avoid the task. The shame builds. The deadline approaches. The panic finally overrides the fear. You scramble, you finish. And for a brief moment, you feel capable. You think, next time I'll start earlier. But you don't. Because your nervous system just learned. The panic works. You don't actually need to change. So the pattern repeats. And every time it repeats, the shame gets deeper. The self-trust gets weaker. And this doesn't just affect your work. It bleeds into everything. Your relationships suffer. You avoid opportunities before they even appear. You shrink your life to match your capacity for avoidance. You're not just procrastinating on tasks anymore. You're procrastinating on your entire life. You are not broken. Procrastination isn't a character defect. It's a protection mechanism your nervous system developed because you learned that your worth was conditional. That failure was dangerous. Your brain isn't sabotaging you. It's trying to save you. It's just saving you from the wrong thing. The trait underneath, the one that cares deeply, that wants to do meaningful work, that's not the problem. That's your strength. It's just been pointing in the wrong direction. The goal is to separate your worth from your output, to let your work be work, not a trial. First, separate starting from finishing. Give yourself permission to start badly, to write the terrible first paragraph. Your job isn't to produce something great, it's just to begin. You can't edit a blank page. Second, treat tasks as experiments, not judgments. You're not on trial, you're running an experiment. The question isn't, am I good enough? It's, what happens if I try this? Experiments can fail. That's the point. Third, shrink the task until starting feels possible. Don't think about writing the essay. Think about writing one sentence. Make starting so small that your nervous system doesn't perceive it as a threat. Fourth, decouple your worth from the outcome. Your worth isn't earned, it's not conditional. You are valuable because you exist. Every time you notice yourself tying worth to work, pause and remind yourself, my worth is not on trial here. Fifth, build evidence that you can trust yourself. Tell yourself you'll work for 10 minutes, then work for 10 minutes. Small, consistent actions. Every kept promise deposits trust back into your relationship with yourself. It's 11 p.m. again. The thing you need to do is still there. But something's different now. You understand what the resistance is. The weight you've been carrying isn't laziness, it's fear. Fear that got tangled up with your worth. Fear that turned every task into a test you couldn't afford to fail. Here's the truth. Procrastination isn't the opposite of action. It's the consequence of caring too much in a system that taught you to measure your worth by your output. You were never lazy. You were scared, and you were scared because you confused your humanity with your productivity. But that equation is poison. It's the reason starting feels like stepping into an arena where your entire existence is on trial. So here's what changes. You stop fighting the procrastination and start addressing what's underneath it. You teach your nervous system that tasks aren't threats, that failure isn't fatal, that your worth isn't something you have to earn every day through perfect execution. You learn to start without the promise of finishing, to work without the demand for perfection, to fail without it meaning anything about who you are. And slowly you begin to trust yourself again. You begin to believe that you can do hard things, that you can try and survive the outcome. Whatever it is, the task doesn't get easier, but you get stronger. Not because you've eliminated the fear, but because you've learned to act alongside it. Procrastination taught you something important. You care deeply. You want your work to matter. That's not a flaw. That's the raw material of a meaningful life. It just needs direction. It needs the understanding that excellence doesn't require perfection, and that your value was never dependent on what you produce. So the next time you sit down to start something and feel that familiar freeze, remember, you're not broken. You're protecting something. But you don't need to protect those things by hiding. You protect them by knowing deeply, unshakably, that they were never in danger to begin with. You are not your output. You are not your productivity. You are a person, complex, valuable, worthy of your own compassion. The work is just work, and you are always enough.